and then make it bigger. Okay, this will be our last online class. Next week, we won't have the online class, but we do have another topic called ergonomics. So you will have to look at the slide and videos that I will give by next week, and then followed by one last quiz. So that's it for our class for this semester. All right. Now we shall go ahead with this topic, stress, occupational stress actually. All right. Okay, so our topic will cover about stress, and we will introduce about the word stressor, the factor, the impact, and how to basically the strategy to cope with the stress. And if you have watched the video basically tell us about the impact of stress. Either it could be short term, long term, and then how to basically cope with the stress. Very simple video. Okay, and if you look at this picture, the stress and stressor, perhaps you can get the idea what is the stress and stressor is all about. Okay, so definition of stress. Well, when we define stress, stress can be used in many disciplines. Perhaps in these days, you might have heard about economic stress due to the pandemic, the COVID-19 impact. So even economic also have to go through some kind of stress. Not to mention stress to our emotional, stress to our physical. They can be applied in many fields. So the one that we are going to focus is basically on job related stress. Okay, when you go to work or when you are at work, something happened to you. So basically, it will affect your emotion, it will affect your physical, and etc. etc. So that's what we call it occupational stress. Perhaps one of the best what we call definition given by HSE UK mentions stress is defined as the adverse reaction people have to excessive pressure. Okay, when we talk about pressure, you cannot avoid having pressure anywhere you go. Even though you work at the best place in the world, there will be pressure. But the issue is that the word excessive pressure. Excessive pressure means to say something that comes beyond what you can take. Okay. And other type of demand placed on you, pressure and demand, or what expected from you. And at the end of the day, basically, it all boils down on your ability to handle, to manage, or to even cope with that kind of pressure or demand. In simple word, when we talk about pressure, it is the issue of supply and demand. Demand is what it is expected from you, okay, by your boss or from your what we call assignment, responsibility and whatnot. And then supply. Supply is what you can give. When what you can give and what you are getting is not balanced, and then that's what we call pressure. Okay. All right. So in our normal daily life, okay, stress is being defined as what we call state of tension. Maybe in engineering, if you are in engineering field, you have heard about what we call stress versus strain relationship in engineering. Let's say, taking example of the beam, okay, beam as a housing element. When you put load, then the beam are being put under pressure, okay? So it could be the pressure in terms of tension or compression, and as a result of that, the beam will basically deflect. That deflection, we call it strain. Okay, because of the load, it will put pressure. That pressure is basically, we call it stress. Okay, and then the strain is basically the impact. So in terms of the loading, the impact will be deformation, deflection of the beam, which is something that we do not want in structure, because that is what we design for. We design any structure to take up the load. Okay, we wanted to know to what extent basically our beam can withstand certain loading and whatnot. So we try to counter that. How do we counter that? By putting or by coming up with concrete with different grade. The more deflection that you want the beam to take, the more the higher the grade of the concrete that you will come up with. And you put more what we call reinforcement, higher grade of reinforcement. That's how you cope with what we call the stress. Similarly, human body will basically subject to many things. Example, burn, infection, injury, even noise. Let's say suddenly you hear a loud noise, or you basically walk through a certain alley, for instance, and then suddenly you hear the noise of the dog barking. Even that dog barking will basically put pressure on your body already. That's what we call because our body reflect to many things. Even a small burn, small cut, or people pinch on you, slap on you, our body basically will react. Okay, and then it will react in such a way. They could be, for instance, inflammation. Your body will turn into acidity due to certain toxin are being released, etc., etc. So meaning to say, your body now become imbalanced in certain manners. All right, that would be what we call specific response. But non-specific response is the one that we call it stress, anxiety, fear, and then increase in heart rate, imbalance of basically certain emotion. That's what we call stress. That's what would happen to our body naturally. Whatever, even we hear things. Let's say we hear earthquake in certain countries, then our emotion get disturbed. And not to mention, if that country do have some kind of some of our relative, our friend that stay there, then it basically disturb us in a bigger situation. Okay, so in such a way, now the stress is coming already due to even a small things. Okay, that is basically natural reaction to our body, or what we call equilibrium, the stability of our body. Okay, stress component could be coming from what we call the environment, the expectation. This is normally something to do with the job. People expect us to perform. People expect us, even in lecturing, for instance. All of your lecturer, for instance, do have certain expectation. So that's why they give you tests, they give you assignment, they expect you to do the test in such a way or assignment in such a way, and then at certain deadline. So all those things basically putting pressure on you. Okay. And at the end of the day, it depends on your ability to cope. Okay. What are the strategy that you come up with? Because everybody will have different strategy. Because only they basically know their body very well. Nobody else know. Different people have different what we call gravity, or in terms of how much they can take. Certain people are very weak. They cannot take a lot of pressure. Small thing also they basically can disturb their mind. At the end of the day, they cannot do anything. So example, even if you hear about quiz, if you hear about exam is coming, then basically that hearing about that thing also putting yourself under pressure already. Not to mention when you are facing the real moment. Let's say the exam will be at 11 today, then the stress is getting higher and higher. And it depends. Some people are very calm because they already know how to cope with the stress. So that's why, because we do have experience with teaching a lot of people. For instance, we even teach what we call people who have been working in the industry for many years. We do have a student, especially PhD student. Okay, they are working adult. They are senior engineer, manager, director, whatnot. But when it comes to exam, they just simply couldn't answer, even though they already have experience, because they are not being used to basically do the thinking in a very short period of time. Okay, even though they might know a lot of things, but in order to write things, to extract the information out of the brain at a very short period of time, they just simply couldn't do it. And that's why younger people basically uh, make it better in terms of doing exam. When you are getting older, then everything very difficult. Okay, you are not basically designed to sit for exam in a short period of time. Maybe you can do better in the assignment, report, etc. Okay, you can put everything out of your brain into a proper thing, but not during the short exam period. Well, that is what we call reaction of our body. Okay, other definition, when, you see, a lot of definition, all basically talking almost about the same things, expected. When things are expected beyond what you can cope or beyond what you can take, okay? Again, expectation, and then capacity, your body capacity, mental capacity, in order to undertake certain tasks within short period of time. Okay. Stress is the process by which we perceive and respond to certain event. Okay. That event or the causes, in a better or simple word, we call it causes. The cause of stress is what we call stressor, because we do have specific definition or wording with regard to the cause of stress. We call it stressor. But in another word, stressor can be associated with hazard. Remember, we do talk about type of hazard. Hazard could be coming from physical, could be coming from chemical, biological, and then physiological, psychological, and this type of hazard is coming from, we call it psychological. Okay, so stressor, in other words, is hazard. Okay, but hazard related to psychosocial, okay, psychology, mental, and to certain extent, basically physical. But for physical, we do have another one. We call it ergonomics. So, what is job stress? Okay, so stress can be applied to many general terms. But when we talk about job stress, meaning to say stress due to job. Okay, when you go to work, then a lot of things that happen at workplace, especially the workload or the physical environment, the hot weather, the cold weather inside your workplace can basically induce stress on your body, emotionally, psychologically, and etc. etc. That's what we call job stress. You see, at the workplace, the stressor, we call it, in another word, we can say the stressor as psychosocial hazard. So we already mentioned that stressor, in another word, is basically what causes the stress. It could be in terms of event, it could be the changes that you undergo in certain situation. It could be a chemical. Let's say you are working at the factory and then you smell something. That smell is coming from chemical. It could be due to diesel, it could be due to ammonia, etc., etc. And it will put yourself under stress. And remember, environmental stress. In Malaysia, we do have seasonal haze situation. Mostly haze is coming from Indonesia due to the burning of the what we call land, agriculture land. It is seasonal. It will come during a certain month in a year. So every year we experience this thing. And when haze come, it will put everybody under stress. You can smell the haze and it can basically get into your eyes and then it will disturb your vision. You cannot basically, when you are driving in at certain place, only the visibility only appear less than 100 meter. That is very bad. So it can affect many things. Uh, it can affect your body. It can affect your mental, etc., etc. So what could be the outcome? So as a result of those stress, it will put a strain. Strain is basically, I already mentioned, the impact. Could be physical strain, psychological strain, and it can affect your job performance. Okay. When people not working productively, okay, not working productively as they used to, they could be due to certain things. Why? Maybe they are being affected by certain what we call decision by their boss. For instance, nowadays due to the pandemic, the economic what we call activity are not running at the full capacity. A lot of people have to be laid off due to organization trying to cut the cost. Even the most affected industry would be travel and the airline. We have heard that even Air Asia have laid off some of the pilot, the staff, and even the crew because, well, things are not going to be working at full capacity even until next year. People say if the vaccine is not around, even the vaccine is not around, it will be available only at the end of the year. And not everybody can get the vaccine because just imagine how many people are around in this world. Just imagine one vaccine will cost how much money. So it will take some time, okay, in order for the economy to fully recover. Okay, when we talk about job stress, job-related stress, these are the factors. Normally, we call it demand, control, support, relationship, role, and changes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think there are a few more. Maybe there are three or four more. Okay, when we talk about job-related stress. So these are the factors. Demand. Demand meaning to say, example, as simple as a workload. People expect you to do this kind of work or assignment, and then people give you deadline. Okay, so that is what we call demand. And then control. Control, basically, how much control do you have? When you are working in a group, in order to achieve certain things, you need to work in a group. Let's say your group or your crew consists of 10 people. Okay, maybe out of that 10 people, you already what we call give responsibility to everybody. You already delegate work to everybody. And in order for certain work to be completed, everybody has to be complete their work at certain times. Maybe you are a good people, good workers. You do your work according to schedule, and you completed your work much earlier compared to others. But then you cannot do anything. Okay, you need to wait for others because you simply have no control over others. They will not listen to you because they are more afraid of the boss, not you, because you are just simply the colleague. In that situation, then it will put pressure on you. The boss keep asking when this thing is going to be finished. You already completed your part, but you need to basically wait for your friend in order to put everything on place. So in that situation, it basically put you on pressure. In simple situation, when you are working in group, let's say group work, group project that need to be submitted in certain deadline, you already completed your part. But unfortunately, there are members in your group which is basically having some kind of problem, attitude problem or whatever. But because in such a way that you must work in a group, and then the group is not the one that you selected, sometimes are being assigned. When lecturer assign you certain people in a group, then basically things start to happen, because there might be some member of the group which basically you do not like to work with, because maybe you are very productive people. You have to work. You are working very fast. Okay, everything basically in a neat order. But there will be certain people. Whenever you go, there will be always certain people which basically have different way of doing things. They would like to basically delay things only until at the end of the deadline. And that is an example. You are being uh, put under pressure because of this scenario. You simply cannot have control over all the matters. And then support. Okay, support. When you want to do your work, you need to have a lot of resources. Resources could be in terms of material, could be in terms of machine, tools, equipment, or even software, or even money. You need money in order to buy things. Then only you can complete your works. When these things are not being equipped, okay, properly, sometimes when you work at the office, your boss expect you to finish your work at a faster rate, but you just simply do not have the equipment. Sometimes even you need to use your own money to buy things in order to get things done quickly. That this only once a while is okay, but normally in a organization, even like UTM, okay, we do have money, but somehow that money is not getting into the right place or the right people. So sometimes we need to use our own money. And that is the situation. Okay. And then relationship. Relationship meaning to say, when you are working, you need to deal with many people. People among your, what we call your group. And then you also need to interact with people at the office. We need, for instance, we as a lecturer, we need to work together with our, what we call a co-lecturer in that particular course. We also need to work with the people at the academic office, at the administration office, at the lab, etc. There are so many interactions, okay? And sometimes when you are working with the people that you do not like because of the certain attitude that that guy have, but you are being forced to, you have no choice. In that situation, it will put you under a lot of stress, okay? And then role and responsibility, meaning to say sometimes you are given, your boss delegate you some role and responsibility which is not equal, meaning to say you get more work compared to others. At the end of the day, it will put you under a lot of pressure. Or maybe because you are the smart one, normally the smart student or smart people will get more works because people will give you a lot of work because they know at the end of the day, you can always complete that work regardless of how difficult. But for certain people, even a small thing also they cannot do. So at the end of the day, the boss will give that guy small things or lesser or less difficult things. So at the end of the day, that guy has been enjoying very less responsibility, simply because what? He make things very difficult for himself. So you notice in a real situation, this thing basically happening a lot. We even have difficulty with even lecturers. Some lecturers, for instance, they do not like to do a lot of things. They only like to do a simple things. So at the end of the day, you need to push a lot more difficult thing to the same person again and again. So at the end of the day, that guy is working under a lot of pressure. So you see, this is the example of role. And then change. Okay, change. Change meaning to say a lot of things will be subjected to a lot of changes due to policy changes, due to the method changes, due to pandemic issue changes. So you need to make changes in the way that you do your work every day. So these kind of changes will put people under a lot of pressure. For instance, now we need to change the teaching method into online learning. And this kind of online learning has now basically putting pressure on many people, not only lecturers, but students and everybody, okay? And even the system basically cannot cope because there are too many things or too many online, even the software, for instance, at one point cannot cope because they are not being designed to take a lot of online courses or online casting at the same time. But then they already add up the capacity and perhaps it will be okay by the end of next year or whatever. Okay, so that is an example of factors that affect job because of this situation, and then it will put everybody under some kind of stress. Okay, job, we call it job related stress. And then out of this factor, we can assess to what extent the extent of what we call risk due to job, control, etc., etc. I do have one of my master student doing stress risk assessment. Okay, he is doing assessment on stress related risk. When we talk about risk can be applied in many different place or different field. But now, how about if we do the assessment on stress? So what could be the hazard with regard to stress? So these are the hazard: job demand, control, support, etc. This is the type of hazard with regard to what we call hazard, stress hazard. Okay, stress hazard. All right. Stress in construction. This is an example. Task related. Okay. For instance, work overload. Anywhere you work, not only in construction, in the office, etc., for sure you will have some kind of work or assignment. Role ambiguity. So if you go back to this factor, they are all the same, except that they are being put under certain group. Lack of autonomy in order to make decision. It can be very stressful. Okay. And then next will be organizational related. Unfair reward and treatment. So this is the issue when you are being assigned a bigger what we call responsibility, whereas you are getting the same payment. Everybody get the same payment or the same salary or the same what we call daily wages, but at the end of the day, you have to work more because you are the smart one, or you are basically the industrious one. The industrious one means to say you can do your job faster. When you finish your assignment faster, but then your boss will give you more work because you finish your work faster. So that's why at the workplace, sometimes people play politics. When you finish your work faster, then you just simply keep quiet. Because why? You do not want your boss to know, so that the boss will not give you more work at that day. So basically, then you wait for the next day. You see, that is the strategy. Inappropriate safety equipment. This is what happened in during the pandemic. Why people have to be locked down?
Make sure, doctor.
Simply due to the fact that we want to not to put a lot of pressure on the what we call the medical team. Medical team are not being prepared due to what? Because of the PPE issue, and then because of what? Because of the ventilator and etc. Okay, so Yazan, what kind of question do you have?
Yes, doctor. Excuse me. You mentioned about people finishing their work but playing politics, not telling their boss.
Ah,
So I'm just asking from ethics perspective, is this ethical or non-ethical activity?
okay. No, because the issue is that uh, with regard to daily works, okay, when you come to work, especially the workers are given a daily task. What kind of task that you need to complete in a day, okay? So perhaps
Mm-hmm.
everybody get the same kind of assignment, but there are some people who are creative enough. They basically plan their job properly because maybe they are very familiar with the work. They tend to do the job at a faster rate. But when they do the job at
Okay.
faster rate, meaning to say they completed the work much earlier, maybe by 3 p.m., they already completed the job. And they go back at 5 p.m., for instance. So they do have 2 more hours before the end of the day. But if your supervisor or the boss see that you already free, and then there are slow workers still struggling to do the work that they are being assigned to, then somehow your boss will ask you, okay, why don't you go and help that guy? So you see, now you are
Okay.
getting more work compared to your friend. This is the scenario. That's why sometimes people keep quiet even though they already finished the work. Okay, they keep quiet because I already done my job very well. So let that guy do their job properly. Because sometimes there are people who just simply lazy. They know they can complete the job in a few hours, but they would like to stretch their work until the end of the period. And to certain, the worst scenario, they would like to stretch the work in order to get the overtime. You see, there are people who do that, especially with regard to construction workers or even factory workers. So if the supervisor or the boss are not being careful monitoring their workers' work, this is the situation that will happen. Okay, why people stretch their work? They wanted to get the overtime. Okay, all right then. Then the third thing.
No, thank you very much.
Okay, no problem. Personal related thing. Type A behavior. Okay, you can basically Google. Uh, we call it this. What we call personality test. Personality test. There are so many personality tests that you can take, okay, to test to what extent or you fall under what category. And one of the psychological tests available, they call it type A, B, and C personality. Okay, type A, B, and C, or sometimes in combination A, B. It could be B, C, but in a simple term, we call it type A, type B, and type C personality. Okay, there are lists of questions that you can answer, uh, and then at the end of the day, there will be scoring associated with that kind of test. So mostly psychological tests can be taken by questionnaire. You can take that thing. Okay. One of the psychological tests we call DASS, DASS. You can just simply Google that thing, type DASS, and then you can take a long answer, normally 42 question, or short answer would be like 21 question. Okay, that would be uh, another type of test, DASS. But we are talking about type personality test. Okay, what is the type A personality test? Type A personality result normally associated with people who are high achiever. What is the high achiever type of person? High achiever type of person is basically people who will always try to complete the assignment very early. Let's say we say our assignment is going to be due at the end of June, for instance. But there will always people who will try to do the assignment, to complete the assignment much earlier. Why? Because that person do not want to get caught up. Okay, at the end of the month, they will never know what is going to come at the end of the month, so they try to finish earlier. And this kind of guy or person will always worry about many things. So that's why they plan to be completed in certain manners. Whereas there could be another type of personality we call normally that kind of person will always associated with type C personality, relaxed situation. So you also have friend with that kind of situation. That kind of person is always going to be relaxed. When that guy hear that we are going to have a test, let's say next week, for instance, he will be relaxed. Only at the end of the last hours, then he will basically study or whatever. See, that kind of personality. So type A person is normally uh, are much needed in the work environment because this kind of guy can always work under a lot of pressure. So as a boss, normally boss will love this kind of a person because when you give all kind of work, that kind of person we can always finish the work regardless of how difficult is that work. That kind of guy will always find ways to complete the task. But when you are working so hard, at the end of the day, you will put yourself under some kind of pressure for sure. So that's why type A personality normally have high tendency to have what we call heart-related illness when you reach the age of 40 and above. Not now, when you are young, everything is still okay. But when you are at the age of 40 and above, then there will be a lot of heart-related illness because during your young age, you have been putting your heart at a lot of pressure. Okay, putting a lot of pressure on your body, on your mind, and on your heart. At the end of the day, your heart basically getting older and older, and then there are a lot of things going to happen. But not now. Okay, maybe at the later stage. But even now, you can see or hear young people also get heart attack. This is a classic example, what we call heart-related illness. Okay, it will normally affect a type A behavior. Type A behavior is normally associated with a high achiever, people who are working very hard. Okay, we need these kind of people in organization. Okay, no doubt. But the issue is that when you are working under a lot of pressure, something will affect your body in the long term. And then number 4, interpersonal relationship, interpersonal conflict between your colleague, and then poor working relationship, as I mentioned, in a group. Not everybody in a group working at the same pace that you like. Some people are a little bit slow, some people are a little bit faster, so there will be a conflict along the way. And then a lack of feedback when you need. Sometimes during even in a group, sometimes when you send a request on WhatsApp, people are very late in terms of response. Okay, you send today, there are people who will respond tomorrow. That will be even better. Some people will respond like 1 week later. Okay, have you ever encountered this type of personality? We do have this thing a lot. Okay, even among our friend or even among between lecturer and student. So it depends. Even sometimes when you communicate as student with your lecturer, there are lecturer will respond very fast, and there are lecturer will never respond. There are lecturer will respond tomorrow or even 1 week after that. So that is kind of situation will put you under some kind of stress. And then lastly, physical environment. Okay, so this is we can associate this thing with site welfare. Maybe Dr. Karozan already touched about site welfare facilities. At construction site, we do have what we call site welfare. Okay, site welfare with regard to the environment, the working environment, which basically put yourself at a very comfortable situation. Example, toilet facility. Example, resting facility. Example, cafe. And then example of the what we call temperature. Okay, hot and cold situation or temperature will somehow put your body at certain pressure. If, for instance, your workplace do have a very nice resting place, very nice cafeteria, very nice toilet, and then very nice prayer room, etc., etc., then basically you can rest peacefully during your break or whatever, in order to basically have a fresh basically you are ready to start your job. Okay, but in certain workplace, they have very poor site welfare facilities. Okay, even though we in Malaysia, we do have some kind of code of practice now being introduced way back 2015, but in terms of implementation, we are not they are not fully implemented yet. So, okay, that is still okay because we do have some kind of code of practice, but in certain place or in certain countries, they don't even have that kind of regulation. When they do not have that kind of regulation or guideline or code of practice, not to mention they are not, for sure, they are not going to be practiced. Okay, when they are not being practiced and then they are putting everybody at a not at a discomfort zone. Okay, you are working at a very bad condition. And then unsafe environment with regard to construction. This is the worst scenario. Why construction basically considered as a high risk industry? Because the nature of work that we are dealing with, example, noise, dusty environment, hot weather, and then we are constantly have to work at height, working at height, and then working with machineries, working with a lot of temporary structure. So this is what we call unsafe environment. So these kind of things basically put um, the construction workers or even the construction professional at in most of the time under a lot of discomfort scenario or zone. Okay, top 10 stressor. We already mentioned about the grouping. So too much work or too little work also can be a problem. Lack of communication, being unappreciated, reward, etc., etc. So all these things already been covered in the previous slide. And then other stressor due to what? Again, job demand, social support, even harassment, and then discrimination. Harassment in terms of gender. Okay, previously, a long time ago, or even until now, harassment based on male and female, that is still going on. And then discrimination due to race. This is what happened in US right now. It has been going on for many years already, but the ability to control the situation is very important. Once it break out, that's what happened. Okay, so in terms of discrimination, it happened not only in US, everywhere. In Malaysia also, we do have the same situation, Anyway, even though if you go to China, even though China might not have what we call foreign workers, but they do have what we call migrant workers. Migrant workers in China that work in the factory or at construction site are coming from their own people. They are coming from a rural area. They also feel having the same situation, being discriminated due to they are being poor and coming from rural area. So there are people who are urban people and rural people. So they do face some kind of discrimination. See? So discrimination is everywhere. It could be due to race, it could be due to many situations. So this kind of thing will put a lot of pressure on people. Okay? We try to avoid this thing as much as possible. And then even having improper skill. Sometimes you are being asked to do certain work which you do not have any knowledge or even any skill. As a result of that, and then people are putting you under a lot of stress. Because let's say if you do not have a computer skill, then you need to work with all kind of this online gadget or whatever. Then at the end of the day, it will put you under a lot of stress. Okay? Because why? Because you need to spend a lot of time in order to figure out how basically this online thing basically works. Okay, you spend hours and hours just to master on certain basically skill. Okay, the impact of stress on our body. The best thing is basically you can watch the video that I gave to you. So it is a similar thing anyway. What basically the impact? It can be a short-term impact and then long-term impact on your body. You see, stress hormone, it can affect your hormone. It can impact on the headache, anxiety, depression. It can affect your sleep, and then it can basically impact on your digestive system. You see, people who get what we call gastric, maybe when you experience some kind of gastric situation, people thought that it is due to you do not eat properly, or basically you eat a wrong food or whatever. But do you know that gastric is mainly due to stress? Not much basically due to that, due to the improper or what we call eating pattern, especially people say during the Ramadan, when you do not eat properly, then you will get gastric. But that could be one of the reason. But the bigger reason is coming from stress. So you see, stress can have a lot of impact on your body. And then cortisol. This is very dangerous. Cortisol is some kind of what we call hormone that will be released when you get a stress, and then it will release some kind of toxic, and then your body will react in certain ways because your body thought it is a toxic and then whatnot, and then it will affect a lot of things. Okay, and then what else? Increase heart rate. When you become basically it is like when you are running, your heart rate will increase. Okay, so you do not want to go beyond certain heart rate, because then you will get some kind of heart attack or whatever. But when you are under a lot of pressure, your heart rates tend to consistently at a higher rate, and then it will give a lot of pressure to your heart in the long term. So this is not good to your body. And then weakening of muscle system and a lot more thing, even skin problem. You know what? When you do have less sleep at night, your skin tend to be thinning. Okay, you notice that your skin will be thinning and thinning and thinning due to lack of sleep. And then you will get all kind of what we call pimple breakup. So the pimple breakup is one of the signs that you do not get enough sleep. For instance, maybe you have to sometimes you sleep during the day, and then you have difficulties sleeping at night. Sleeping at night is very, very good in order to increase for your cell basically to recuperate or to be repaired and whatnot. But then you already change the schedule of the day. You sleep during the day and then you wake up during the night. That will, in the long term, will have some kind of impact to your body. Okay, stress strain symptom. We already mentioned that when you are being stressed, then it will affect your psychology, physiological or physical, and then behavior. Okay, you will behave in certain manners. Okay, for instance, when you feel basically your body at stressful level, then somehow you will resort to some kind of drug. People can tend to take some kind of drug and then will take some kind of medicine in order to let them sleep. But then suddenly you notice that you are becoming too dependent on certain drug or medicine. At the end of the day, you will take drug at a higher dose again and again, then you will get what we call drug overdose. This is what happened to many celebrity, Hollywood celebrity. You notice that what happened to Michael Jackson, what happened to even Prince and Michael Jackson, if you know them, they are basically rival. But those famous people, at the end of the day, die to drug overdose. Okay, mostly related to stress. Okay, you don't believe that rich people or famous people, they are basically alone. They are under a lot of depression due to what? Because they cannot get out of the house freely as compared to normal person like us. They do have a lot of money, but at the end of the day, people, their friend that they have are after their money. So at the end of the day, they are being left alone. So they are under a lot of stress. Okay, the people expect them to perform whenever they release some kind of movie or song. The people expect the best out of them, but sometimes it didn't happen that way. So they are being put under constant stress. So that's why famous people like Michael Jackson, Prince, Elvis Presley, Marilyn Monroe, all basically died due to suicide, drug overdose. Okay, even though they are very rich, they are very famous, because being famous and being rich not necessarily that you are going to be happy. That is the things that normally people associate with. Okay, stress symptom, it can affect your mental, physical, emotional, and then your behavior. You notice that physical symptom, fatigue, sleep. Okay, when you sleep too much or when you sleep too little, you notice that something is happening to your body. Your body is trying to adjust, maybe due to stress. Sometimes you never know that you are at a stressful level. So if you want to know what is the level of the stress, your stress, so again, please go to Google DASS and please take this test. Okay, this is what we call a psychological test. Please answer all the questions honestly, and then you will know what is your stress level at the end of the day. Okay, so these are the symptoms that you can see whether you are being affected or not. Then what else? Mental symptom. Okay, lack of concentration. If you cannot concentrate for a very short period of time, then basically you may be under a stressful condition. Memory lapse, you tend to be forgetful. Okay, you cannot remember things easily. Then something is happening to you. Okay, and then also you tend to be confused. There are people who are confused at everything. Okay, compared to even small instruction that lecturer give, there are certain students tend to be confused. So meaning to say, please check back. Maybe you are under a lot of stress. Okay, you are under a lot of stress. And then what else? Behavioral symptom. Uh, there are some people increase smoking. Let's say you are smoking one pack of cigarette 1 week, and then suddenly you smoke 2 pack of cigarette in 2 days. So you notice that something is happening to your body. And eating disorder. When people are stressed, sometimes you tend to eat too much. There are some people who basically, when they are stressed, they do not eat. They do not have the appetite. So it depends on certain people. For me, when I am stressed, I eat too much. Okay, uh, I do have appetite to eat, but there are some people when they are stressed, they basically lost their appetite. They do not eat, so they become thin and thin and thin. And then what else? Emotional symptom. Okay, you become impatient, especially driving. You see, you notice that road raging. When they are on road, they just simply lost patience. Why? Because they are simply under a lot of stress. The stress not because they on the road actually, the stress due to the workplace. Maybe they are stressed at home, okay, due to they are having some kind of family problem. Maybe your wife or your husband or even your children could be the source of stress. But that is we set aside of the family matters, but our focus is basically job related stress. Maybe you are very stressful at a job place, but then it will affect your behavior during driving. Okay. Okay, emotional symptom, and then what else? Overview of the stress process. Okay, uh, so there are a lot of the source of stress. I would say the source of stress, and then at the end of the day, it will basically, this is what we call the symptom, and then this will be the impact. We already covered about this thing. All right. Factor affecting stress and stressor. Main factor could be due to tasks, organizational, personal factor, interpersonal, physical factor, and then external factor. So all of these things actually we already mentioned in our job related stress. For instance, demand, role, they are the same thing anyway. Okay. task-related factor, workload, okay, and then role ambiguity, role conflict, and then organizational, lack of standardized procedure could be source of stress, and then hierarchy of the authority. For instance, UTM, we already changed our faculty into school. So now we are having a lot of problem with regard to the authority because our authority has been changed. We do have multiple authority. Now it make a lot of people under a lot of stress because there are so many what we call layers of uh, people or control that you need to basically answer. And then lack of support. We already mentioned about this, but this is in a proper way. You see, type A behavior. There could be type A, B, and C. The one which is the most critical is basically type A behavior, which is good people, but then in the long term, they will have some kind of impact to your body. And then interpersonal factor, okay? In term of example, stubborn people who do not like to follow the rule, okay? And then people who are not loyal to your group or to your organization, especially in the current politics. This could be a source of stress and etc. Language barrier. You see, when you communicate with people, some people could not understand you due to they speak different language. When you go traveling, and then you are going to face these kind of difficulties. And then physical factor. Uh, example, pay crowded area, limited space, etc., etc. And then external factors such as the haze that I mentioned to you, okay, and even what we call legislation, rule and regulation, and then gender, the harassment, okay, or violence, and then work environment, positive work environment, negative work environment, bad and poor work environment can affect you. And then the impact of stress we already mentioned. It could be short term, long term, weight gain, sexual frustration, fatigue, etc., etc., etc. Okay, impact of stress. And you notice that the latest survey by chartered CIPD, top causes of long-term absence. Why people basically do not come to work? Okay, people do not come to work due to what? Mental illness, stress, musculoskeletal injury, and then acute medical condition, and then work and non-related injuries. You see, all these things related to stress. And then work-related stress basically have a big impact on the economy. For instance, in US alone, 300 billion estimated job-related stress. And then in UK, 11.4 million working days lost, meaning to say people take sick leave or whatnot due to stress. And in France, for instance, 3 billion due to job-related stress. And then not to mention suicide. As I mentioned earlier in the class, during the first meeting, I mentioned suicide rate among construction workers in UK is very high. You can Google suicide rate among construction workers in UK. Okay. construction workers is very high in UK due to a lot of pressure. We might not think that what really happened to the construction workers. We thought they are very happy working, but in contrary, if you have been to the construction site, you know that construction site is like a what we call concentration camp. People are being put in a small place at the hostel or at the what we call in Malaysia we call it rumah kongsi, okay, and then they are being forced to work at pressure because due to the tight deadline, okay, the construction anywhere you go, people always like to work to get the project to complete at a faster rate. So at the end of the day, you put everybody at a lot of pressure. Okay, not only construction workers or even project manager. They are survey based on project manager stress. You can basically Google under my name. I do have a few paper related to work-related stress. Project manager is the one that under a lot of pressure. No wonder that people pay them very high. You can get the salary of 20,000 per month, even in Malaysia, but then you are working under a lot of pressure. Okay, sometimes it is not worth it. You get high salary, but then a lot of pressure. Okay, so what to do? That is the nature of life. Physical health problem, cardiovascular, musculatal, and then even what happened in your gas in your stomach. Okay, psychological health, anxiety, bad lower, and then whatnot. There are a lot of things. Okay, we already mentioned about this thing, and then at the end of the day, the issue of how do we get rid of this stress. Okay, you can basically Google, and in fact, in the video, there are a lot of tips how to de-stress. Okay, all right. For instance, uh, learn to relax. Okay, number two, time is on your side, meaning to say you need to properly arrange or prioritize, and then avoid overloading. Don't be afraid to communicate. Okay, communicate to your colleague, communicate to your boss, etc., etc. And then what else? Kick your bad habit. Prioritize, we already mentioned. Or in a simple word, I would say there are so many tips. I will give you a simple tip. SPEED. First one, sleep. Okay. Sleep is one of the therapy. Okay. Sleep is one of the therapy to get rid part of your stress. When you go to sleep, and then you basically forget about what you have been thinking. Okay, so having enough sleep is very important. So that's why even now people do talk about sleep management. And you notice that even people like Bill Gates. Bill Gates suddenly, no, not suddenly, recently, I think this year or last year, he was being uh, uh, there is a what we call a meeting or interview or talk show invited him to review on certain books. Okay, that book is about sleep management. After reading the books and after getting old, And then he mentioned that now getting sufficient sleep is very, very important. When he was young, for sure, he mentioned that he didn't have enough sleep because he has been working on many, many, many things. But now he appreciates sleep more. Okay, when you are getting older, basically you cannot work at the same phase when you are younger. Okay, so but even now when you are young, you still need to manage your sleep very well. Okay, having a proper or sufficient sleep is very important for your body to recover. That is how you balance between pressure that you are getting and then the way to get rid of your stress. Then P, P is what we call prioritize. So prioritize is here, number 5 here. Prioritize meaning to say you have so many things to be done at what we call short period of time. You have so many assignment due, you have so many tests, you have so many online exam coming up, but all those things can only be achieved when you plan properly. You know that there are certain things that require a lot more time, so you set aside more time for difficult things, and then you set a lesser time on the thing that you can manage. So at the end of the day, for sure, all the things can be settled as a matter of prioritize. And then E is basically empathy. Empathy is similar to what we call communicate. Communicate or share with people that can give you proper advice. Meaning to say, you share your feeling. Do not share the issue that you have with the WhatsApp group, with the Instagram, with the Twitter, with your Facebook friend, which you do not know, and then you will get all kind of nasty comment, and it will put you in a more stressful situation. The empathy, meaning to say, you share with people that you can trust. That people can comfort you. If you still have your parent, if you still you have your good friend, or you can go to the counselor, whatnot, in order to get some kind of opinion, or basically people can comfort you. When you talk to the right person, actually half of your problem is basically being solved already. Without that problem being solved, now when you just simply talk to the right person might have some kind of advice, or maybe due to the experience of that person can give you some kind of tips. That kind of tip can be very, very important in solving some of your problems. And then E, exercise. Make your body move, because human body somehow is being designed to be moved. When thing is not moving, then you will get all kind of illness. This is what we call musculoskeletal issue with regard to your body. So when you go for some kind of exercise, you release what we call happy hormone. That happy hormone will counter what we call the cortisol being released due to the stress in your body. Okay, so exercise is very important. Anything that can make your body move. And then D, the last one is basically we call it devotion. Devotion. What is devotion? Example of devotion: yoga, meditation, or for Muslim, the best thing is basically the prayer. When you pray, when you zikir, when you read Quran, you do all kind of things, it will calm your body. And if you do not do this, for instance, you know yoga, please do that. Yoga basically is the exercise where you basically calm your body. So all those things is basically very helpful in order to de-stress. Remember, we cannot avoid stress in our working environment or in even in our life, but the most important things is basically how do we manage the stress. Okay, if you know how to manage the stress, regardless of how big is the stress, you can always find ways to get rid of the stress, and at the end of the day, you will basically will go through successfully in your life or in your work or in your work as a student, etc., etc. Okay, that is the most important things. All right, so that is all that I want to say about stress.